Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Would like to mention that Councilmember Tom McDonald is not with us this evening, and we wish him well on his trip, and he should be back for our next City Council meeting. We now would like to make mention of some upcoming events that are going to be occurring in our city. On August the 11th, the 18th, and the 25th, the City of Orem will hold Friday Night Bites from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Palisade Park. On August the 15th, we have the primary election. Just so that everyone knows, you have to have your ballot in postmarked by August 14th, and the post office closes by 6 p.m., and usually you have to get it there by 4. So please make sure and get your ballots in. Every vote counts. August the 31st, we have our Employee Appreciation Lunch at noon at the Timpanogos Park for the City of Orem employees. September the 13th through the 15th is the Utah League of Cities and Towns 2017 Annual Conference at the Sheraton Hotel in Salt Lake. September the 14th is the Drill Down for Safety exercise at 6 p.m. citywide. October the 7th is the Touch a Truck event from 10 to 1 at Mountain View High School. On October the 11th, we have our Orem Fire Open House from 10 in the morning to 7 p.m. at night at Fire Station number 3. That's always extremely well attended, so you want to get there early. October the 14th is the Utah Valley University 27th Annual Scholarship Ball at 5:30 p.m. And November the 7th is the general election. We now would like to go on to our personal appearance time. We ask that you give us your name and that you, yes, I will, give us your name and that you keep your time to 3 minutes. Prior to doing that, though, we're actually going to do some appointments to boards and commissions, and then we will go to our personal appearance. So we have several appointments. The first one is to the Heritage Advisory Commission. We have one vacancy, and Russ Sneeden has applied for that. Snedden. And he has worked with the Heritage Commission in the past and has a continued interest, and this would be a reappointment. We have Mary Stoville Richards, who's applied to work in the Library Advisory Commission. She believes strongly in the importance of libraries and of historic preservation and hopes that her knowledge and skills might be a benefit to the city. We have Katie Patty, who's applied to work for the Summerfest Committee. She's interested in serving the city by helping plan Orem Summerfest, and she's enjoyed going there for many years. We have Brent Wignall, who would like to serve on the Summerfest Committee as far as the auto show goes. And we have Crystal Wiley, who would like to be part of the Summerfest Committee. She would like to help out with Summerfest, and she believes that she can be a strength to make it better. So do we have a motion to accept these individuals to those committees? Are any of those individuals I've mentioned here? If so, can you please stand? Great, thank you.
I would move to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We now will go on to our public appearance. We would again ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes and that you give us your name. And the first one to come forward is Nicole Brown. Afterwards, we have Dustin Brown.
Good evening. Never done this before, so. My name is Nicole Brown, and I live at 147 West, 2000 North in Orem. The crosswalk leading to Oak Canyon Junior High is actually right in front of my house. Because of this, I am more aware of than your average citizen of the dangers associated with that crosswalk. Cars are often coming down the hill going over 35 miles an hour, and cars coming up the hill can't even see the crosswalk until they're within feet of it. Even as a concerned mother, I struggled to recognize the flashing lights warning people that there's a school crosswalk there, and didn't even notice it until I made a conscious effort to find it. I don't believe that it is too much of an exaggeration to say that kids risk their lives every day using that crosswalk. In the winter, it's even worse because parents, it's practically impossible to turn on to 2000 North from the junior high, and so parents will pull over to the side of the road in front of my house and drop their children off and get stuck in the snow. In fact, last winter I saw a Suburban almost T-bone another car in the crosswalk in an effort to try and get back out on the road. Thankfully, there were no kids in the crosswalk at the time. However, I know of 4 kids who have been hit using that crosswalk, including my own 7-year-old son. When my son was hit, the truck that hit him didn't even hit their brakes until after they had hit him. Thankfully, they just grazed, so he was not injured. But if he had been 1 second faster, that would have been a completely different story. Last spring, in spring 2016, there was a student that was hit in that crosswalk as he used it after school and did receive serious injuries. Despite this serious accident, nothing has been done to create some sort of safety for students to be able to cross that street. And if you think it's dangerous during school times when people are more vigilant, it's terrifying to use at any other time of the day. The fact is that it's a miracle no one has been killed using that intersection. And what's even more concerning to me is that this has been a dangerous intersection since my husband attended Oak Canyon Junior High over 20 years ago. With more and more young families moving into the area, we can no longer ignore the dangers associated with this intersection. A simple stop sign would be a minimal expense and provide safety associated with people trying to utilize that crosswalk, and would also save me quite a few gray hairs. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dustin Brown. First of all, I'd like to thank my wife for making me feel old. I did attend that over 20 years ago. Continuing the conversation about the crosswalk on 2000 North, Nicole talked about crossing a lot during school hours. I want to talk a little bit about after hours and in the evenings. We've gone to the junior high several times as a family for concerts and such. I also use the crosswalk to get to the Murdoch Canal Trail to go ride my bike and go run. There's been several times where our entire family, 6 of us, have been in the crosswalk and cars have stopped and honked at us to let us know they were not happy with us crossing the road at the time. So what we're asking is just to have a traffic study done during all hours, during school hours and during the evening when people are using it for recreation and for school, and also to find a solution to make it safer for not just the kids but for all citizens to use that crosswalk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, can you just repeat the coordinates that you're concerned about?
Yeah, it's at 147 West, 2000 North.
So I'm familiar with that intersection, and I know of the dangers of which you speak and have driven through there when school is in session. So we will take a look at that. We appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead now and close the personal appearance portion of our meeting tonight and move on. I'm not aware of any consent items or scheduled items. And as far as communication items, anything from the council that they wish to bring forward? Okay, you have to push your button.
So I've got a question for Sam on the UIA meeting coming up on Monday. Do you know if that's going to be a vote on the $13 million? And if so, I would like the council to say yay or nay if you were in favor on voting for it. So.
And could you clarify what 13? I haven't seen an agenda yet, so I don't know what 13 million.
The 13 million, the difference of the UAA bond difference on the taxes, on the interest. I mean.
If I may, it's my understanding that Utopia or UIA specifically has been talking about issuing additional debt and using essentially system revenue as a means to retire that debt. In order for them to do that and in order for them to move forward, the UIA board would need to approve what we call a parameters resolution that would set out essentially the specifics or parameters of any future. I too have not seen the agenda, but if that is the, I mean, obviously we can follow up and see if in fact that is what's on the agenda, but essentially what it would be is not authorizing the debt to move forward, well, it would be part of a process to move forward with additional debt on the part of UIA. So this would be the beginning process of essentially deciding to move forward with additional debt. It's not because it's an issue that is internal to UIA, and system revenue would be the basis for retiring that debt in the future. The cities would not be required to pledge anything above and beyond what we currently have pledged, and therefore it's not something that would require any action on the part of any of the governing bodies other than UIA.
So I just was, I mean, if we are going to vote as Orem, I would like to know how the council stands on that. If that would.
Well, and that's, I mean, obviously that's not something that's on the agenda tonight.
Nor have we been given the information. But if we were given the information or had it, then I think it would be beneficial to find out the council's feelings.
Well, let me see what I can find out here in the next few minutes.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or thoughts? Okay, anything from the city manager? Okay, I would accept a motion to adjourn to a meeting.
Mayor, I'm sorry, I do have one.
Sure.
As you know, Karen McCandless serves as the executive director of the Community Action Services, and they have a need for a new member of the board representing the city of Orem. Over the last number of years, Stella Welsh has served in that capacity, and she approached Karen McCandless and said that she is at a point now where she'd like to retire from the board. So Karen approached me and said, will you please work with the mayor and city council in the appointment of a new representative? Now, representation on the board by our community has in recent years been from a non-elected official, and that was at the encouragement of our former city attorney, who suggested that if we have a financial relationship with an organization that we partner with, that it would be best to not have an elected official serving as a board appointed or a member of the appointed board in the agency that we're financially supporting. We have historically provided CDBG resources to community action, and that was specific counsel that was given back at the time that Paul Johnson served as a city attorney. I don't know, Greg, if you have any history or recollection of that.
I don't have any recollection, but I think the concern would be as the council allocates, for example, CDBG funds in the future, there would be a conflict of interest for at least that council member who would be voting on the distribution of those funds.
So, for example, there are situations where municipalities have had elected officials serve as members of the board. In other cases, for example, in the case of the city of Provo, they have a city employee who serves in that capacity. Up in Wasatch County, they have, I believe, a county commissioner who serves in that capacity. So it does run the spectrum, but I do believe the same concern exists today that Greg highlighted. That was the basis for the city council in years past recommending Mayor Welsh, given her obviously affiliation, association with the city, but at the time she was obviously not an elected official.
Okay, so we will look into that, and if the council has recommendations, please let us know. If other residents have recommendations, we'd be interested in hearing that as well.
Would they just complete the
information sheet that we have for volunteers? Our website?
I mean, they're welcome to contact me. For example, if you have particular names, I'd be more than happy to reach out to the individual and gauge their interest. If there's, for example, majority consensus amongst you as a city council, then that's something that I'd be happy to facilitate.
So we could collect some names and then we could counsel on that together.
Are there
Jamie?
specific skills we're looking for or that they would like?
The feedback that I did receive from Karen was specifically, if I may, says somebody who cares about people of all economic classes and is willing to advocate for those in poverty.
Jamie, what's the timetable? When would this start?
The board meets on a monthly basis, and their next scheduled board meeting is August 22nd.
Okay.
So Karen was contacting me just to say, hey, this is something that's in process. We can reach out to Stella for this month and see if she will continue for one additional month, but we would like Orem's feedback as soon as appropriate and possible.
Okay. Thank you. If no further comment, I'd take a motion to adjourn to a meeting of the Redevelopment Agency of the City of Orem.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will call to order the Redevelopment Agency of the City of Orem, and we'd like to begin by approving the minutes of the Redevelopment Agency meeting of June 13th, 2017. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have one scheduled item on here. That is a recommendation by the Economic Development Division Manager of the City of Orem by motion to approve the participation agreement with RW Imports Inc. and BBF Real Estate LLC, and the loan agreement with BBF Real Estate LLC for the Brent Brown Toyota dealership. Our presenter is Ryan Clark. And Ryan, do you have the applicant here with you?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, I'm accompanied by Brent Brown. He's just sitting right behind us.
Okay.
Also, Heather Shriver will be assisting with legal questions, and Cody Hill is representing Lewis Young, Robertson, and Birmingham is our financial consultant that did our study.
Brent, would you like to come forward and have a seat right there? Thank you.
I did, and it didn't go up.
Good to have you here.
Okay, let me go back. There we go. So
This is usually the longest part of the meeting, getting hooked up electronically. Yes. That is true.
all right, sorry about the delay. All right, we're here tonight to present to you the participation agreement and loan agreement with Brent Brown Toyota. Before I get started, I'd like to give a little bit of background. You're very familiar with this, so I'll try not to spend too much time. But as a reminder, the importance of sales tax revenue to the city of Orem in the 2016.
Can you pull your microphone up just a little closer there? Thank you.
The 2016 fiscal year, sales tax accounted for 36.3% of the general fund revenues. Citywide in 2016, $2.3 billion was spent on taxable sales here in the city, of which the city received $21.4 million. Of that amount, $307 million spent on automotive purchases and parts. 51% of that came from new vehicle dealerships, and vehicle sales are 14.8% of total sales tax revenue. Brent Brown Toyota specifically is the third highest sales tax generating business in Orem. They have 143 jobs currently, and an average annual wage for the auto industry of new car dealerships is $51.8 thousand per year. Brent Brown also is now, they advertise as the #1 new car dealership for volume in all of Utah, which is very impressive. As a reminder, in our economic development strategic plan, goal number 9 is to maintain supremacy as a regional retail hub of Utah County. They talk about that goal as one of the 3 top priorities. Retail sales are vital to Orem, and the city needs to stay abreast of retail trends in order to maintain its position as a center of shopping activity. Some of those trends for new car dealerships have to do with the relative market area, recruitment by other cities, manufacturer requirements, and then specifically our new car dealerships are dealing with space restrictions. Recently, the state changed the law with relative market area. Previously, that relative market area was a 15-mile radius that originates from the center of a new car dealership. What that means is if another new car dealer wanted to locate in the same area with the same manufacturer, they would have to the existing dealership would be notified by the new dealership, and then the existing dealership would have the ability to protest that new dealership, and that new dealership would have to go before the Utah Motor Vehicle Franchise Advisory Board and hold a hearing to see if the relative market area could afford 2 new car dealerships within that relative market area selling the same product line. That market area has now been changed to a 10-mile radius. That's opened up other parts of Utah County to the ability to have the same manufacturers that we do here in Orem, or dealerships that sell the same models. So it's in our interest to reinvest in our dealerships and make sure they retain their market share.
Hey, Ryan.
Yes.
So how far north is 15 miles and 10 miles?
Well, 10 miles means that Spanish Fork and Lehigh are opened up, and new dealerships could go in there that sell the same models that are located here in Orem.
And prior to that, it was north of the point of the mountain?
North of the point of the mountain.
And south of Spanish Fork?
Correct.
Thank you.
And other cities have made efforts since that time. West Jordan has been actively recruiting. Draper has recruited some dealerships out of Sandy, and as you can see the picture here, Vineyard is advertising for a new auto mall on the Vineyard corridor, which is 800 North extended into Vineyard. With the manufacturers, they often hold requirements that the dealerships must meet. At times, that manufacturer holds all the cards, and they require that dealership to reinvest in their showrooms and do upgrades at specific times. Brent Brown Toyota recently did that. They upgraded their showroom, they upgraded their site, they invested just shy of $2 million into their dealership, and they had a grand reopening in March of 2016, which was a fantastic event. They actually had representatives from International Toyota there. Brent could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a very rare occurrence to have people attend. Here we can see an aerial photo of the dealership. Right now they are overflow parking on the Stephen Henniger site, and they are looking to expand into the parcel on the south with the strip mall. This is a picture of that overflow parking where they're parking new car inventory, and also employees are utilizing that space. And here you can see the strip mall that they're looking to acquire. The cars that you see parked there are actually overflow parking from the dealership at this time. So they run their expansion solutions. Yes, Mayor?
Just a real quick question. So are there existing businesses in that strip mall, and how long are their leases for?
There is one business left. It's the laundromat. The restaurant has relocated up to the Parkway near Chili's. The other two businesses were already out of business, and then Boomerang Books has another location on the Parkway, so they've just consolidated into that location.
So, Brent, would you be buying the laundromat out?
They were on a month-to-month lease.
Okay, thank you.
So the person that's selling us the property, they're fine.
Sure. Okay.
This is a concept plan. This plan is slightly outdated. It shows 10 vehicle service bays. There's actually 9 service bays, but they will renovate the building to allow those service bays so they can increase their service capacity, and then they would pick up the additional parking area, which they can utilize for additional vehicle inventory that can then be sold to the public. Here's just those items mentioned in a list. They'll pick up 47 parking stalls, 9 vehicle service bays. They'll increase their inventory and their service capacity. It'd be a capital investment of $2.3 million. 10 new jobs would be created. Additional inventory, projected increase in service and vehicle sales. This would result in additional tax revenues to the city. And as a reminder, they've already invested into this dealership in the last couple of years, up to almost $2 million. So we have come to agreement with them to bring this forward to you to execute a $650,000 loan to the dealership. It would have a 15-year term at 9% interest. If they meet the requirements, their annual payment would be forgiven. If the requirements are not met, then they would have to make the payment, or they could add another year to the retention term and increase that 15-year term. So if they add a year, that is in lieu of that payment. So the payment amount would go off of the loan and a year would be added. Their requirements are to complete and redevelop the property as per the plan, create and maintain those 10 jobs throughout those 15 years, maintain or exceed their average sales tax levels for an average of the years 2010 to 2016, and then remain in Orem for 15 years. The funding source for this loan is existing redevelopment agency funds that have been generated through this project area, and this loan meets the requirements of the redevelopment project area by increasing the tax base and providing additional jobs. So the advantage are we protect and retain our Toyota sales tax base. Our city revenue will increase due to the expansion of the dealership. The agreement's a loan and will require repayment if the performance criteria is not met, and then we protect against recruiting efforts from other municipalities. It's also a 15-year retention term. Increased inventory correlates with increased sales and 10 new jobs. The disadvantages are if the sales and service do not increase as projected. If they don't, then we won't receive an increase in sales tax. And then the dealership could still move out of the city at any time if they pay off their loan. And I'll turn the time over to Cody Hill to talk a little bit about the analysis.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's great to be here. My name is Cody Hill. I'm an analyst for Lewis Young Robertson Birmingham, and I worked with Laura Lewis to produce this model and report that looks at the fiscal impact of 3 different scenarios that you see in front of you. So one of the scenarios is that the agency city decide to support the dealership, and the dealership expands and remains in the city. The second scenario is one in which the dealership does not receive any support, but nevertheless remains in the city. And then the third scenario looks at what would happen if the city did not support the dealership and the dealership relocated outside of the city. And so for each of these scenarios, we'll look at the potential costs and benefits, and then we'll compare each of the costs and benefits to the different scenarios. So scenario 1, the city supports the dealership and the dealership remains and expands. The potential costs include the initial loan amount, which is $650,000. With that, there's also an opportunity cost. You could be using that $650,000 for other potential projects to build up the city's development. And then there's also, if the projections that Brent Brown has given us don't actually pan out, then that will be tax revenue that the city won't realize. And then also after the agreement is at over 15 years, then the dealership could relocate outside the city. And then the potential benefits include a slight increase in property tax value as they purchase the property and improve it, significant increases to taxable sales, and then also they'll be required to pay the loan back if they don't actually realize those growth increase in revenue. They're going to create 10 new jobs, and with those jobs, the employees will spend money in Orem, which will increase the tax revenue, and it'll maintain and expand the best use for the land in that area. And then looking at scenario 2, the potential costs include the risk of losing the dealership, and there will be not any significant increase in tax revenues. The potential benefits include the ability to use the $650,000 for other economic development purposes, and the land use is maintained as its best use. And then looking at scenario 3, one in which the city does not support the dealership and the dealership relocates outside of the city, the costs include significant loss in tax revenue to the city, as well as the potential that that site would be vacant for a time and the potential to develop light. Potential benefits include just the use of the tax of the $650,000 for other development purposes. And then in comparing these 3 scenarios, or just looking at the aggregate benefit and cost of the scenario, we look at the total benefit from 1 year. So this looks at scenario 1, year 2. So it takes the total benefit from that year and then deducts the total costs as well as the previous year's deficit or surplus, and then that gives us the aggregate cost and benefit. And then stacking all of these scenarios, aggregate benefit or deficit, I want to point out 3 things. So the first thing is just scenario 1, where the city supports the dealership's expansion. You would hit break even, which is you would realize recoup the $650,000 from additional tax revenues that would come in from the expansion after year 4 at year 5. Another thing I'd like to point out is the point at which the net aggregate benefit from scenario 1 surpasses that of scenario 2, which is at year 5, just after year 5, when the aggregate benefit of scenario 1 is $192,000 and scenario 2's aggregate benefit is $73,000. And then also one thing I wanted to point out was just the potential cost that would come if Brent Brown were to relocate of $665,000 in lost sales tax revenues at year 2, which is just a little over more than the amount proposed to support the dealership's expansion. And that's illustrated in table 5.1, the point at which the benefit from scenario 1 passes that of scenario 2. And then looking at the net present value for all 3 scenarios at years 15 and 20, you'll see that the point at which the dealership is no longer contractually obligated to remain in the city, the city will have a net present value benefit of $1.2 million after 15 years, but it's likely that they'll remain for longer than 15 years given the investment that they're putting into the property, and that net present value would be $1.8 million for scenario 1. So our total analysis would show, just due to the risk of Brent Brown relocating its dealership outside the city if unsupported, we recommend that the agency provide the requested support for the dealership's expansion and improvements. And this option provides stability to the city and agency's revenues by maintaining the highest quality and best use for the property.
And that's all we have prepared, so if you have any questions, we're happy to answer them.
Councilmember Lentz has a question.
So first of all, Cody, the first table where you had the 1-year aggregations year by year,
sure.
Just to confirm, that wasn't net present value, that's just actual dollars there.
Correct, yeah, that shows
okay. Just wanted to confirm. So Ryan, we'd spoken yesterday, and I think it would be helpful, if nothing else, for the benefit of the public, as this is a public meeting. Sometimes we get questions, well, why are we giving these incentives or perks to some businesses and not to others. And I think it would be helpful if we just kind of took a step back and asked the question, where did these funds come from originally? And if you like, I could even try to, break it down into my simple terms, and then you can correct me if I've misunderstood anything. And so I can take a stab at that.
I'm happy to explain if you'd like.
Okay, yeah. Why don't you go first? And
so these funds come from tax increment financing that is collected during the life of the redevelopment area. So there's a lot of confusion on what RDA means. RDA actually stands for two things: the Redevelopment Agency, which is what the board here is, and then the redevelopment area. And the project area was created in 1985, and it includes the Walmart campus, the Hangtime campus. It goes up University Parkway. It includes the Garf Nissan dealership, and that is the border there. And so throughout the creation of this area, in 1985, the base value of this area was $6.8 million. Over the years, as tax increment has been collected through this area to help redevelop it, help to build these projects, the value of the area has increased to $117 million. So it's grown quite significantly from the investment into this area. And the money that's been captured, when they create the RDA, they lock the current property tax rate and at a certain level, the amount of money that the taxing agencies are receiving. As the value grows, it creates new tax increment up in here, and this is what's captured, all the new growth. So if the project never were to develop and grow, there wouldn't be any money to capture. That money is captured, and it's used to pay off bonds and debts that were used to develop the area with new infrastructure, utilities, streets, and whatnot. And I think and deals with developers that did the Walmart project, and also with the at the time home base project. And so this money that is in this RDA has come from the growth of that area, and is what is the current fund balance.
And the tax increment that was collected, is that just on the city's portion of property tax, or does it also include the other taxing entities?
It does include the other taxing agencies. The first, and I may misspeak here, I'm just talking in general terms, but the first 5 years or so, 100% of that new growth was captured. Then the following 5 years, 80%. The next 5, 60%, and then it dwindled down. That has actually ended. It ended a couple years ago, and that money is not collected anymore. So now the taxing agencies or entities are collecting, like Alpine School District is collecting all of that new tax revenue growth that's been created through this development.
So if somebody asked the question, well, why is this money going to this dealership rather than fixing the road right in front of my house? These RDA funds really can only be used for this finite list of purposes. But if we make this kind of investment and then we're receiving the tax revenues that it's designed to generate, then that money can go to the general fund and be used for these other projects.
Correct. This money has to be spent within the redevelopment area, and it typically is used to create jobs, to create infrastructure, or to increase the tax base, and we're increasing the tax base with this project, which will result in higher sales tax revenues for the city, and therefore that would go into the general fund.
Thank you.
Councilmember Spencer has a question.
So, question on the average sales tax for 2010 to 2016 for Brent Brown Toyota. What's the average?
What is the average?
Because you're doing an average of 2010 to 2016, right? Is that what I saw on the slide?
That's correct. I unfortunately did not bring that number with me, and I apologize, but I can look that up and get back to you. But you can, I think, for the last year, we were approximately 660,000. I think Cody's got that number. Maybe he can pull it up quickly.
And then a question for Brent on the 9 new bays. How many bays do you have now?
35 for service, and then an additional 8 for cleaning and detailing cars.
Thank you.
So, question I have, you're picking up 41 additional parking spaces, if that's correct?
That's 41 in the way that the city calculates them, but we'll
use them for 82 or whatever.
We're hoping to be able to put somewhere in the range of 70 additional vehicles there that'll be for sale.
Okay, and the vehicles that you have to the south of you there at Stevens Henniger, will that take all those vehicles into this new area, or will you continue to store vehicles there?
I'm glad you asked the question, because this is I hope this is appropriate for me to mention, but we are exploding in growth, and this will help us, but it won't solve our growth situation that we're going through. And so we are currently negotiating with the folks that own what was Home Base to try to buy some of that property as well. And we'll be coming back to Orem City. We understand that that's a difficult situation, not coming back to Orem City for money, but coming back to get perhaps permission to be able to use that excess parking that they have there, and and be able to turn that into retail space. But that's something for the future. We're still in the negotiations on that. But we have gone from having been just a very average sized dealer in Utah to now being the single largest auto dealership of new cars in the whole state. Not just the largest Toyota dealership, but the largest new car dealership of every brand. And a lot of that came because, and I'll be as brief as I can here.
Sure.
When I took over the dealerships, the Toyota dealership was selling less than half of the Toyotas that were being sold to residents of Utah County. That's a staggering number when you think about it, that the local dealer wasn't even selling half of the cars to the people who were buying them from the community. Now we've turned that around to where we're one of the highest anywhere, and to be quite frank, for the first quarter of this year, we were actually the #1 dealership in the whole United States in customer retention. In other words, if you buy a car from us this week, and then 2 years from now you're back in the market for a new car and you come and buy from us again, that's what triggers that. And we've been top 10 in the nation now for the last year and a half. The reason I say that is because what it's doing, and it's a wonderful problem to have, but what it's doing is it's causing this enormous increase in our volumes, whether it be in sales or service and so on. And we already, for instance, expanded our hours, opening on weekends and opening on, not on Sunday though, but opening late at night, and doing everything we can to be able to keep up with the demand from the consumer. And the issue that we needed solved, that this property addresses, is one, the parking space for us to be able to park additional vehicles to be sold. And that's where a big increase in sales tax generation will happen. It's just when we can park 75 additional cars or 70 additional cars, the reality is that we're going to sell probably 55 of those in a given month. And when we can open up that much more space, the way that we're doing it is we'll be working on our own reconditioning of cars and then quick service in this new building, so that our existing building with those 35 stalls can now be used for all the customers that are lined up in the morning. So anyway, it accomplishes a lot for us. The good news is that when we came to Orem, we were just kind of a mid-sized dealer down in the middle of the pack, and now Orem has Utah's single largest new car dealership. And I guess I'm proud to say that shouldn't be in Orem, that should be in Salt Lake, but you know what? It's in Orem, and we're pretty happy about that, and we make a lot of noise about that, and hopefully the rest of the state can see that Orem's a good place to do business.
Well, we commend you for that, and you've got a great location and doing a fabulous job. So, Councilmember Spencer has a question.
So, Brent, I have a question. With your explosion in business, does Toyota put any requirements on you on the size of the buildings or anything like that? That since your business is going so well,
they did, and we overshot the mark, so to speak, when we moved into the old Ford building, and that was by design. I could see that we were going to be going, increasing our sales and so on and so forth and growing. And so we went way beyond what their requirements were. And quite frankly, we are still over their requirements, even without this building. But with this building, it then puts us even farther past their requirements. And I think we're in pretty good shape. The other thing is to kind of address something that Ryan talked about, where there's this concern of another dealership, for instance, in this, just outside of this 10 miles. I just want to mention that the manufacturers put a requirement, it's called sales efficiency, where they say that you're supposed to sell this many vehicles because your market is this big and it has this much population and so on. And dealers typically struggle to be able to get to that 100% sales efficiency, for instance. And when they're not at 100% sales efficiency, that's when the manufacturers are knocking on their door saying, you know, we're going to put another dealership if you don't. Anyway, we're at 167%. So we're just way beyond what they would expect. And that's why they come to us and are so supportive of saying, you know, we'd love for you to get this additional building. We'd love for you to do these things because we don't really want to put another dealer in. You guys are doing exactly what we want.
Thank you.
So I remember 2 years ago that you were very concerned about the relevant market area, the RMA, and we had discussions about that. And yet it seems like you've been able to overcome that and move forward, even though that changed by, 5 miles. Any comments on that?
You know, it's always a concern, but the real threat is when you're not doing a good enough job. The long and short of it is, these manufacturers, they wave a real big stick if you're doing a bad job. And if they don't feel like their brand is being well represented, and if they feel like they're not getting enough cars sold, then they'll come in and, just like you're talking about, outside that 10 miles, that's a pretty good threat of there being another dealer. And the way to avoid that is simply to do what we're doing, and that is to be breaking all the records and
Sure.
getting all the awards. Sorry to say it that blunt, but that's pretty much what we're doing.
Sure. Well, good. Well, again, we appreciate what you're doing, Ryan.
Yeah, Cody here was able to pull up those numbers, David. He only has 2011 to 2016, but the average during those years was 315,000. The reason we're using an average is it's hard to project what the market will do if we have another downturn in the economy, and so we've tried to insulate that somewhat to make it a little more fair than just to base it on the highest years, which have been the last 2 years.
So the 660,000 was like last year?
Correct. And in speaking with Mr. Brown here, while they were redeveloping their dealership, Toyota actually does something that a lot of the other manufacturers don't do. They actually send them additional inventory to help with sales during that. And maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but they've actually had more inventory than they typically would have.
That's actually correct, and we have new news that just came to us last week, and that is that Toyota agreed that with the purchase of this building that they will do additional inventory for that building as well. And so that increases it even more.
So it'll have a ripple effect to it.
Definitely.
And if I could add also, these are very similar terms to the Honda and VW agreements that we've done previously.
Thank you.
So one thing I think that's important to realize is the RDA funds are to be used. They're not just to sit in a bank, number one. Number two is the reason behind this is to help bring more jobs to the city of Orem and to your dealership, and to improve the economic status or area of our city in bringing additional sales revenues to the city. So it really is a thing that will help you, but also help the city as well. And the money is being well used to that point.
And I believe I should mention that we've been fairly conservative with these numbers in terms of the amount of employees and the amount of revenue and so on and so forth. Case in point, we just completed the single largest month in our 25-year history this last month, selling 429 cars, 303 new cars. It's only the second time in the history of the state of Utah that a new car dealership has surpassed the 300 car mark. So these are numbers that we had never even thought of. And quite frankly, when I was sitting down with Ryan and putting down the projections, I never would have dreamed of these kind of numbers. When you consider that in 2000 and 2010, a lot of our months were upper hundreds, maybe 200 cars, and now here we are selling 429. So you can kind of see,
Wow.
What's taking place.
That's tremendous. Any other questions from the council? Okay, pardon me, you have a question?
With this last month,
It's not a hearing.
do you have a reason why you think you had so many sell last month? Was there a pent-up demand? Was there something unusual? Or do you think it's something that's going to be sustainable for the future? I guess is my question.
Here's my answer to that, because it's a really, it's a basic question, but it's a really loaded question, and we've been contemplating this a lot, because many, and I think I'm probably okay saying most of our competitors are starting to see business taper off. And I just got back from a meeting with 20 different Toyota dealers, and a general theme of it was talking about, a little bit of a downturn type of thing with car sales. This is where, and I'm not just saying this because you're all Orem City Council people and the mayor, this is where I feel really fortunate to be doing business in Orem, Utah, because we have a vibrant economy. So we have a combination of a vibrant state economy and the best community in that state to do business. And then, with all due respect, I think you have the state's best dealership doing business there. And so you put all those three together, and it really turns into something. The other thing is that the typical Toyota dealership, for instance, they would sell 38 to 40 out of every 100 of their customers. 38 to 40 of them would be past customers, and the remaining 60 to 62 of them would have to be people that they went out and attracted by advertising and marketing and all that. Well, our past customers are 69.2%. When you think about that, it means that we're only having to go out and attract 30, 31 people out of every 100. All that says is that, and that's why we were #1 in the nation. That's why we continue to be top 10 in the nation in customer retention. It really just says that the people of our community, they'll be loyal if you'll be good to them, kind of thing. And I'm not trying to do too much of a pitch here, but I'm saying we have a really good marriage here in Orem. We love Orem. We love doing business here. And the thought of moving somewhere else, we can't stand that idea. And so that's why we're doing every single thing we can to be able to grab onto this property or that property or anything that we can to be able to sustain the growth, but stay right here.
Appreciate your confidence in the city. Councilmember Spencer.
Just a quick question on your demographics of customers. Are you pulling much from north, from the point of the mountain, or is it more Utah County?
We pull from all over Utah, but the key to our success is that we pull a higher percentage out of our own community. Toyota calls it a primary market area, and we sell a higher percent of our primary market area than any other dealership in the whole 6-state region. That's really it, and it's my business philosophy. It's not, put out such, crazy deals that you're attracting people from all over. It's just take really good care of the people who live right in your backyard, and then they'll send all their friends and their family, and they'll come back again, and that's what we're being the recipients of. That's how it's working.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that said, I would like to make a motion. I would like to move that the Redevelopment Agency of the City of Orem approve the participation agreement with RW Imports, Inc. and BBF Real Estate, LLC, and the loan agreement with BBF Real Estate, LLC for the Brent Brown Toyota dealership. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We'd like to start with Councilmember Sumner.
Aye.
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 Okay, the motion passes. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I would now accept a motion to adjourn the Redevelopment Agency meeting this evening.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you.
I don't even know what that is.
You're welcome to say it. You've done it. I was going to say, I'd be interested to see how that goes with the parking lot.
So I was